Hi everyone, I'm Mark Harrison and this is a history of Rome. Last time we heard of the further development of Rome following the death of Romulus, and how a succession of Latin and Sabine kings had extended Roman power and influence in all directions, even west to the sea, where they built the port of Ostia. We heard how many religious institutions were founded and rites introduced, and how new peoples were successfully integrated into Roman society. Let's continue. 616 BC brought a new king to power in Rome. Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, or Tarquin, was not the most obvious of candidates to be selected for the throne of the Roman kingdom. He was an Etruscan of Greek descent. He had already tried his hand at politics in Etruria and had been a complete failure. So with little left to lose, and at the urging of his wife, he set off to try his luck in Rome. It is said that his journey was unremarkable until, that is, an eagle swooped from the sky and took the cap from his head. The bird then circled before returning the astonished man's headgear from whence it came. Tarquin's wife, Tanakil, who it was reported was a prophetess, read the event as a sign of her husband's impending greatness. Tarquin was, by all accounts, a likeable man who made connections quickly. After some time, he apparently attracted the attention of the then king, Ancus Marcius. They became friends, and Tarquin eventually became a permanent fixture in royal circles. In fact, when Marcius died, so close had Tarquin and he become that the Etruscan was entrusted by will with the guardianship of Marcius' sons. Now finding himself in a major position of power and influence, and using his natural charm, Tarquin lobbied the Senate to select him as the candidate to be the next king. Seemingly persuaded of his merits, the Senate acceded. The people, also finding favour in him, voted to ratify the Senate's choice, and thus the political failure from Etruria became the first Etruscan king of Rome. Despite what appeared to be majority support for his rule, a possibly still insecure Tarquin may have viewed his position as being weakly held, for upon accession he immediately increased the number of senators to 300. With the new men of the Senate now owing their elevation to Tarquin, they were thus likely to be considerably more loyal to the new king than the old guard. In practical terms, Tarquin's rule was little different from what had come before, with it being one of almost constant war with Rome's neighbours, namely the Sabines, the Latins and the Etruscans. His problems began with the Latins. For reasons that are unclear, Tarquin had seized the town of Appioli. The Latins, believing that this now meant that their treaty with the Romans was now dead, naturally counterattacked. But being wary of Rome's power and remembering their previous defeats, they were determined not to go it alone, and so requested the assistance of the Sabines and the Etruscans. Despite now potentially facing multiple enemies on multiple fronts, Tarquin kept his focus on the Latins, refusing to be diverted or to split his force. His strategy paid off, as his southern foe proved to be no match for him. He crushed the Latin forces and in the process captured several towns and extended Roman territory. Quickly wrapping up his campaign, Tarquin turned his attention and his army to the east, where a Sabine force, supplemented by Etruscan auxiliaries, had encamped in a strong position at a river confluence. The force was well positioned, deterring the Romans from advancing further into Sabine lands until it was removed. The solution Tarquin's men came up with was to send fireboats down the river to set the enemy camp alight. The Sabines, now distracted with firefighting, were easy prey. The Romans struck, dealing a heavy blow to the now unprepared defenders, forcing them to scatter. And with the way now open, Tarquin was free to move into Sabine territory. The Sabines, now faced with a Roman army on their land and few forces left to resist them, agreed to a peace treaty, one which relinquished control of the town of Calatia to Rome. Following his victory, Tarquin now looked to sign a treaty with the Etruscans. However, peace proved impossible due to his refusal to release the Etruscan auxiliaries that he had captured during his fight with the Sabines. and this obstinacy could have proved ruinous to the Romans, as the force that the Etruscans put in the field was considerable. They had mustered men from 12 towns and cities of the region. Indeed, the Etruscan army was initially very successful, even capturing the town of Fidene. But Tarquin proved himself to be a capable commander, and the army he led was strong and battle-hardened, and the Romans threw back their enemy. Then they subjugated those towns and cities that had warred against them. Once more, Rome had showed its martial prowess, and as a result had yet again extended its power and influence. The king, now much more secure in his role, took to the streets to celebrate a triumph for each of his victories. During these triumphs he showed the Roman people how he had enriched their city by displaying the plunder that he had taken. In the years after the wars, he used this plunder to further enhance his prestige through great building projects. Of the most famous were the construction of the Circus Maximus, the great venue for chariot racing in Rome, the city's first stone wall, the beginning of a temple to Jupiter Optimus Maximus, and the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's first major sewer. This latter construction, which dramatically increased city sanitation, was aided by draining much of the surrounding lowlands. Despite his obvious successes, Tarquin's earlier fears of insecurity were, at the end of his reign, justified. His death in 579 BC, after 38 years on the throne, was a violent one. Despite Rome having an elected, not hereditary monarchy, the sons of Ancus Marcius had always believed that the kingship was rightly theirs, and that Tarquin, having been entrusted with their upbringing, had abused his position and usurped them. The conspirators organised a riot, and using it as cover, had Tarquin dispatched with an axe blow to the head. The brothers' plan of a coup, however, was foiled by a quick-thinking Tarquin, who, despite knowing that her husband was already dead, stated that he was alive, just incapacitated, and that a man named Servius Tullius would act as regent. Now, Servius Tullius was born the son of a slave, but not an ordinary slave. His mother, Acrisia, was said to have been a Latin princess who had been captured when the Romans took Corniculum. As benefited her status, Acrisia had been given to the king's wife, and by all accounts was treated well. When she gave birth to the son of her late husband, the child was treated by the king as close to part of the family as possible. And over the years the bond between them became so great that this son of a slave was eventually permitted to marry the king's daughter, Tarquinia. And so it was that Servius Tullius stepped from the shadows of slavery into the role of the King of Rome. For now, having installed him as regent, Tanaquil announced her husband's death, and with the connivance of the Senate had Servius proclaimed king, and all without recourse to the people. The sons of Ancus, having now been comprehensively outmanoeuvred, had little choice but to flee into exile. The reign of Servius focused primarily on political reforms. He is noted for the introduction of the role of censor, the formation of the Comitia Centuriata, and of the reformation of the Curiate. He was also responsible for the overhauling of city administration, where he divided Rome into 4 districts: the Collina, Esquilana, Palatina, and Suburana. These divisions would actually remain intact until the time of the first emperor, Augustus. His list of credits also includes the construction of the temple to Diana on the Aventine, and of building a great stone wall around the city, which subsequently bore his name, the Servian Wall. Though modern historians believe it was actually built long after him, in the early 4th century BC. When Servius' reign came to an end in 535 BC, it did so much in the same way as it had started, through murder. With his elevation to the kingship over the sons of Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, he feared retaliation. In order to forestall it, and to hopefully fully heal any division, he had the brothers married to his daughters. Lucius Tarquinius married Tullia the Elder, whilst Arens Tarquinius married Tullia the Younger. These matches, however, proved to be ill-made. Whilst Lucius Tarquinius and Tullia the Younger were aggressive and ambitious, their spouses were of a much milder disposition. Seeing little chance for advancement in their current situation, they conspired together to have their spouses murdered before going on to marry each other. With their domestic issues having been brutally solved, they then turned their attention to the goal of securing power. Through extensive bribery and ruthlessly exploiting the connections made by his father, Lucius Tarquinius secured the support of a great many senators. Then, when he had deemed the time right, he went to the Senate House and summoned the senators to attend a speech of King Tarquin. It was a speech in which he denigrated Servius' slave origins, highlighted the fact that he had not been properly elected, and criticised the introduction of the census and Servius' favouring of the lower classes. As soon as news reached him of what was happening, Servius set off to the Senate House in order to defend himself. But on arrival, he was met by Tarquin, who restrained him before physically throwing him outside and down the Senate House steps. Now badly injured, Servius attempted to make it home, but whilst moving through the streets, he was set upon and killed by Tarquin's men, the order possibly having been given by his own daughter, Tullia. Tullia, using a chariot, now made haste to the Senate House in order to laud her husband as the new king. But the Roman Senate was no place for a woman, and Tarquin ignominiously sent her home. On her way back, probably feeling considerably put out, Tullia came across the body of her father lying in the street. Her driver stopped and refused to go further, but Tullia simply took the reins herself and drove over her father's corpse. The dishonouring of Servius did not end with this incident. Lucius Tarquinius, now in power, refused to allow him a proper burial, and it was for this action that he was given the name Superbus, the Proud. And so Rome, under new Etruscan rule, had begun to descend into a more brutal form of politics. A new king held the reins, having attained power through the murder of his predecessor and the corruption of much of the Senate. It remained to be seen what the future of Rome would be in the hands of Tarquin the Proud. If you like our work, please help by subscribing, pressing the bell button and commenting. And we'll see you next time on A History of Rome.